Welcome to the Medic Side Hustles podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shubhendu Kulshreshtha, an executive coach and emergency physician, helping clinicians like you make medicine your side hustle. I also author the impactful Clinician micro newsletter and a side hustle readiness quiz taken by over 350 clinicians. It's in the comments now. In each episode, we'll sit down with an inspiring guest who's redefined their career, turning their strengths and experience into something greater. We'll dig into their journey and draw out a career roadmap, finding the crucial decision-making moments that we can all learn from. In the second half, I'll hand over the hosting to my guests and let them ask me whatever they like about coaching or non-clinical careers. Live audience, you'll get a chance to ask us your questions at the end, so please keep putting them down in the comments with the letter Q in the beginning, making it easier for us to find. And so let's get started with a quick introduction. Today I've got with me Dr. Joe Watkins, who's a GP, a business mentor, and the co-founder of Howe People. Joe's helped hundreds of doctors build successful businesses while juggling clinical work, family, and everything in between. This conversation is for any clinician thinking about launching a coaching business, a consultancy, a service-based brand, and wants a real honest look at what it takes. So thanks for joining me so much. Thanks so much for joining me today, Joe. How are you?
That's a pleasure, Shub. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm very good. I was just telling you why I'm in my son's bedroom, so apologies, but he's the tidiest kid in the house, so I am here live from his bedroom.
Fantastic. And that's the beauty of working on your own terms. You can do it from wherever you like.
Yeah, exactly. So my little one's downstairs on the sofa poorly, and there was no other option. So I've shifted up here, and yeah, anything's possible. She's got tomato soup and she's got the controller to Netflix, so she's happy.
Brilliant. So I've done a very quick introduction, but I'd love for you to tell people a bit more about your journey, how you got to where you are now, and just a big picture overview.
Yeah, sure. So thanks again for having me. I am Joe Watkins. I am a GP. I still practice on a Wednesday when we're in the country. I'm a GP. I'm a business coach and mentor now for other medics and healthcare professionals that want to start personal brands, side hustles, service-based businesses, particularly online. And that's what I've been doing predominantly for the last 2 years. But prior to that, really over the last 15 years, I've been carving my own path alongside my medical career. And it has absolutely been an evolution, a journey, all of those cringy words that people talk about, but it has been. This time, 15 years ago, 15 and a half years ago, I was going back to work after maternity leave with my second child. I was a GP partner 2 days a week, fantastic partnership, best friends who I'm still very close to. I was already doing the kind of practice website, and I'd become a trainer, and I was doing all of those things. And I remember driving back to work after my second child. I wasn't burnt out. I wasn't particularly miserable. I was quite happy. I had a great life. But I remember thinking that professionally, this is not the only thing I'm going to do. I just knew that there was something else, but I really wasn't sure what. And I went on a bit of a journey along the way because I didn't really have what I now like to support other people with. And 15 years ago, maybe, coaching, business coaching, personal development wasn't really as much of a thing as it is now. And I kind of felt a little bit like a social pariah. I was like, well, I've got two wonderful children, an amazing husband. I live by the sea. I've got a 2 day a week partnership with some of my best friends. Like, what is wrong with me? Why isn't that enough, And I had this, I remember distinctly a conversation with one of my partners, and I'd redone the practice website and I'd done various things. And she said to me, "Oh, you're quite entrepreneurial, aren't you?" And I remember thinking, what does that even mean? Like, I don't like, am I? I'm not sure I am. I'm just somebody that does stuff. Anyway, she was the first person that put that little thought in my head.
Mm,
And then I essentially came across a problem, which was to do with breakfast cereal, really randomly.
okay.
I came back from a holiday in Canada, started making granola with my cousin's recipe, tried to go to the shops to buy some similar granola because it was really delicious. And everything I found was full of sugar and absolutely gross and
Mm,
was really bad for you and being sold as a really healthy breakfast cereal. So I had a problem. And little did I know at that point, I'd come up with a solution. And there started a kind of 3 year journey into starting a business and understanding from beginning to end what that meant. So I learned about
wow.
everything: branding, sales, marketing, doing live in-person stuff, shows up and down the country, winning a at the BBC Food Festival, going down to Harrods, like everything you could possibly do in a food business. I
Gosh.
did. I also wore all the hats, made all the mistakes, tried to do it while pregnant with two children and a dog, running it from home, not outsourcing, every mistake in the book. But it was the most incredible learning curve. And that was really my journey, the beginning of this journey. But like I say, no coaching, no mentoring, nobody to stop and say, what are you going to do with this business as it's growing? Because
Mm.
it clearly is. How is this going to work out with three children? And I think if somebody had sat me down then, I would have come up with all sorts of reasons why it wasn't a very good business idea. But at the time, I was fully into it. Anyway, 3 years went by, pregnant again with number three, and it just became unsustainable. It was really tough on the family, tough on running a house, like impossible to do with kids. And at that point, I'd left my partnership and I was working part-time in a minor injury unit. So I was doing 2 days a week still around the school day. And I sort of panicked, well, not panicked a bit, but I just didn't know what to do. There was a
Mm.
potential to sell it on to somebody else that was going to carry on making it from the kitchen. But I knew that that person would have to invest, probably half, at least £250,000. Like we'd need to get venture capitalists or some
Mm.
sort of investment to get a factory up and running, employ people. It was a big
Wow.
outfit that was required. And I was just not wanting to do that. That just wasn't what I wanted to do. And I didn't know why, but it just didn't feel
Mm.
right.
Mm.
So we put a stop to basically mothballed the business. And then the next adventure became going traveling for a year with four kids. There was another one by that point. So the next chapter was travel, which we can come back to. But that was a huge turning point because that was the point that I started really trying to drill down on what this was about. And I basically went through a period of self-coaching. What do
Okay.
people come to me for? What do I love?
Mm.
What makes my heart sing? What would I get out of bed every day to do if no one paid me? And I went through about 4 months of listening to podcasts, reading books, journaling. And that's when the idea of I had three business ideas that came off the back of that. And one of them was the Howe People.
Mm.
And I came back from that period of time traveling and I knew exactly who I was going to run that with. And I went to Polly, who's a great friend of mine, and I said, look, I think we need to start this. This is a thing. It was supporting teenage girls from the transition from primary to secondary school, like a cool version of guides, outdoor club,
Wow.
surfing, communication skills, fire building, just so much fun, journaling, gratitude, like all of the stuff that teenage girls need to hear, friendship, social media, etc. And we did our first pilot course in 2019. And that was a real adventure. So that was the beginning of a different chapter. But as you can see, what started off with, I'm not sure what to do, has
Mm.
taken a full journey through a food business. There was also a holiday let business in between. Then the How People, which was essentially something we were going to grow as a franchisable business, having hubs down the M4 corridor. We were going to find the right people to run it in different locations, to
Mm.
run this as a like after school club, like
Wow.
brownies basically, but cooler. I say cooler in that like doing stuff
I mean, it's got
outside.
surfing in there. It's
Yeah,
definitely cool.
exactly. And also we were always about role models, so bringing teenage role models
Yeah.
into the girls' lives and talking to them, people just that little bit ahead.
Mm.
So we had this whole concept, and then COVID happened, and obviously we had live events booked up and down the M4 corridor. We had to cancel them. All our surfing was cancelled. We were running that with a really good friend down here at the time. Everything was cancelled, and that's when, within 10 days, we decided we were just going to try and learn as much as we could about an online business. We did a series of talks during COVID with inspirational role models. We raised about 2 grand for NHS charities, and we just hosted Zoom calls. And we were basically like Ant and Dec of like
Mm.
teenage girls on Zoom. And we were like, this is great, let's do it. Like these girls need this point of contact in COVID. Like
Yeah.
nobody was doing anything. 7 o'clock on a Thursday, that's what we did. So we started a membership and we had a founding members group of about 50 girls at the beginning of COVID. And that was the beginning of the How People. And then that was a 3 year journey. Again, I'll talk about that at length, but I understand the pitfalls of what went on in that business. And it's still functioning, but in a very different way now because we're out of COVID, needs have changed, and we need to adapt to that.
Mm.
But towards the end of it, 2 years ago, loads of medics kept saying to me, right, how do you get the confidence to start a business? What do I even do? Like, where do I find a website? How do I do a logo? Do I need CQC? Do I need this, that, and the other? And I was answering the same questions on emails all the time. And I thought, actually, I could go out there and help somebody. And then somebody came to me. She said, look, I really want you to mentor me. And I did. And that was Neris Freighter, who's amazing. She was my first ever coachee or mentee. And
Mm.
I then did the learning needed to get up and running. And now that's the predominantly what I do in a group format, one-to-one format, little different courses and offerings, and the podcast. So I absolutely
Wow.
love, and a big varied week at the moment.
What a evolution, what a journey from starting off being a very good, happy GP by the sea surfing. I mean, what would you say now to those people who thought you might be mad to leave that and go and do something else?
Yeah, I think I remember a conversation with the leaving partner. There was a retiring partner who was leaving around the same time that I decided to go. And I remember that conversation quite vividly because I've had to sort of process that a little bit. She was one of several people that were really quite surprised and disappointed that I was
Mm.
leaving. She was like, you're really good at what you do. Like, this is such a shame. And I think what I hear now from other medics is you wear that and you feel that, it's such a disappointment. It's a shame. What a waste. These
Mm.
negative inferences as to what you might be doing. And I have had to process that and kind of rid myself of that guilt because that is what it started feeling like. I was like, well, I should be doing this, this, and this. I should be remaining a partner. I should be working more than I am. I have remained a clinical doctor because I actually really enjoy it. And I've been very fortunate to find actually one of my ex-partners, so somebody that you would imagine might be a bit disappointed that I'd jumped ship. She introduced
Mm.
me to a doctor that had arrived recently and taken over a managed practice about 5 years ago. And he said, look, I'll support you in whatever way you want to work that means that you can still work a bit. So he's been
Wow.
incredibly supportive. And that's the practice I've been going back to on my own terms. I say, oh, we're away for 3 months, and they're like, no worries, we'll see you in April. And, they're just great.
That's
And it
amazing.
works both ways. They like it when I'm there and vice versa. So I don't feel that shame and guilt anymore, but I know
Mm.
that that is a thing that people feel. I
Yeah.
think what they were feeling for me at the time was actually just trying to keep me safe. I was independent. I had 2 day a week. I had a good income. I was able to work around the children. And actually that now when I mentor and coach people in that position, I say to them, hold on to that for as long as you can because you need to have money coming into the business to be able to support you on those 3 days to be able to work on your
Mm.
business. So I left my practice probably earlier than I would recommend somebody did. But I transitioned straight into working 2 days a week in and out of hours. So I was still working 2 days a week, just in a different way.
Yeah.
But I felt so sad leaving. I felt like I'd let myself down.
Mm.
I was thinking, well, what is wrong with me? I thought there was something wrong with me that I wasn't happy with that. Like that would be
Mm.
what people would most people would bite your hand off for that. What was wrong with me? So it took me a while to realize that this was about fulfilling my own sort of like deeper purpose and
Mm.
shedding the guilt. Because now, like the impact of me doing what I'm doing now and
Yeah.
supporting, say, if there are 10 doctors working with me have got expertise and ideas and things to get out there in the world, if they don't work with me potentially, or you or somebody, then those ideas might sit there and they might not do anything about it.
Yeah.
If those 10 doctors are given the clarity, the confidence, the support to walk alongside them and say, you can do this,
Mm.
follow this path, to try this, try that. And if they make that thing happen, the knock-on effect and the
It's
impact of
huge.
that is massive.
It's massive, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I don't feel that
yeah,
anymore.
you mentioned that like when you were in that GP role, everything seemed fine, and you had this itching feeling that there's something else, there's something more to that consultant life beyond just CCTing. And what would you say now was the missing bit retrospectively?
I think I'm I think I'm baseline unemployable. I don't like fighting for having to justify to somebody else why I need holiday
Mm.
at a certain time. I'm quite independent.
Mm-hmm.
I like to manage my own diary, my own time.
Mm.
I like to be able to make decisions for myself. Like when you're running your own business, if there's a part of something that you're not enjoying, then you can change it into the next
Yeah.
control and you can make things happen. I think the NHS is to a point in general practice, you are independent, but it's really
Mm.
to a point, right? And
Yeah.
so I think for me there was independence from an organizational perspective, but with a big family, I need to be able to work around the kids.
Mm.
And I think I felt a little bit like that was out of my control. I was doing 2 long days. I was getting home after the kids had gone to sleep. And I know it's only for 2 days a week and it's not a big deal. But for me, it was a big deal. I wanted to build a life that meant I could be on every school run. I could go
Yeah.
to every assembly. If it was like yellow day and I'd forgotten a t-shirt, I could go and get one.
I,
And I
I love
wanted
that
to be that mother.
And I love that you're saying that because we're often made to feel like that's asking for a bit too much, but it really isn't. I mean, we all have a perception of the way we want to live our lives, and I think we do deserve that based on what we do in our day-to-day life. And so many people that I speak to as well say, "Am I asking for too much? Is that too much to ask for?" And I say, "No, not really. It's your choice." And I completely resonate with the independence there as well because for me, emergency medicine spoke to me because of the degree of independence it gave you in practice. And I guess, yeah, the next level up, as Derek Sivers says in his book, is really starting a company, starting a business, is creating your own world, creating your own ecosystem that you have control over.
Yeah, that's very much how it feels now. And that's not for everybody because I think, we'll probably come on to, a lot of people don't want that uncertainty. And I'm very lucky that my husband has that certain, he's an anaesthetist, he has that certainty. He goes out to
Mm.
work and he earns a certain amount every month, and that's that certainty. And I sometimes wonder, how would this have gone if it was the other way around, if I was the full breadwinner? So I know that I'm very lucky to be able, and we've taken a hit in different ways financially, but actually it's that longer term vision of what you want for your family. And I think as a female doctor, sometimes it feels like you can't be a present mum and a good doctor. And I just like, for me, it was really important that I wanted the kids for me to be around, even if it's being around and being on a Zoom call. Although I don't do
Mm.
anything after 3 o'clock that isn't just the odd reply to an email. I never do recordings or anything when they're around. But they know that I'm working and they know that I'm making something happen and they know that I have this bigger vision and I'm building something. And, I think that's just as important as a role model to our kids as it is for me to go out to work as a GP. Our children are going to work very differently. If they decide to be a doctor or an engineer, they're probably going to have five versions of that in their career anyway. So, it's about that confidence in what you're role modeling and that possibility. And I think running your own business it is about being able to flex and change and see opportunities and take them and then draw back and then go a different way. And a lot of people find that really uncomfortable, particularly
Mm.
medics, because we have never done that before.
We love a surety. I mean, lay out a path and we
Yeah.
will hit those check marks
Oh
so
yeah,
easily.
100%. Yeah.
But this is a
We
whole
love
new
a hoop.
journey. We love jumping through them. Yes, absolutely. But making a hoop, oh my God, that's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Making a hoop, and who's gone through it before? Who's tried out the hoop?
Yeah,
I think that's the kind
yeah.
of like, oh. But
I've
once you
not been
start,
signed off.
once you start making those moves, then you get that
Yeah,
kind of traction and confidence, and yeah, it all sort of starts
absolutely.
fitting into place.
So I think that's a good segue into what I want to talk about next, like making those hoops for yourself. I think one of the hoops we got to make on this journey is the hoop of problem identification. And you alluded to this when you talked about the granola journey of wanting to make the cereal for yourself but struggling to find the right granola, and then there was a problem you came across. How far down did you have to go into that problem to be able to come up with a solution that told you yes, I can reasonably work on this and it likely be something I can commit my time to.
I did about, oh, I did 5 months of market research. So
Mm.
we got back in September. I started looking around and making it from September. And then it was January time that I started going through the branding process properly. So I didn't want to just, because obviously, especially in the food industry, well, in any industry, you've got the expense of, you know,
Yeah.
logos, what marketing, websites, all the things, not to mention all of the ways that you want to get it out there. But I basically just started super rough and ready. And I've got a picture from my first market locally. I mean, it kind of gives you a headache to look at. I've got like one, an apron in one color, four different children wearing different colors, like a horrible tablecloth, and literally like paper bags.
Okay.
And I started in that, and I think I probably read The Innocent Smoothie, the story about them being at a festival and they have the
Mm,
smoothies and then they have do we make this a business, a yes or no bin? And it was a
right.
little bit like that. It was literally, I just made a vat of it. I got in touch with the guy that runs the local market. And I said, look, can I come along for the next couple of months and try this granola and see if people like it? And I did
Mm,
like crappy labels, like literally like, font from the computer, printed out the crappy labels, got the paper
yeah.
bag, and then I got some feedback. But this had come about because my neighbour next door, Nigel and Helen, they run the Surfside Cafe. So they run three cafes that serve a banging bacon and egg roll on
Mm,
the seafront. And I was making this granola, and my husband said to me, I'm sure Nigel would sell it in the cafes for you if you thought you could sell it. And I was like, do you know what? I think I might go and tell him. So I jumped over the wall and I was like, oh, Nigel, you've got to try this stuff. It's like they have it in Australia and Canada and New Zealand. It's a massive thing. And he was like looking at me like this. I said, it's a big thing. People go out for breakfast and they have this, and it's going to be the future. This was 15 years ago, right?
okay.
So we'd just discovered paninis and cappuccinos in Wales. Like it was like way before proper brunch places. And then he tried it and he was like, look, Jerry, it's nice and everything, but nobody is ever going to go out and pay for that when they could have a bacon sandwich. Because we were so, that was his thought about this
Yeah.
sort of option for breakfast. So that was a bit of a challenge, but he was quite happy to give it a go. So he was happy to give it a go. So I thought, well, I'll start local. I'll go with Nigel in the cafes. I'll go to the market. And I went to our delicatessen olives and oils. And I said, if I was to package this up nicely and do it properly, would you stock it? And he was like, yeah, I would. So actually two shops, a market and the cafes. And I tried it out in the cafe, in the market, because obviously if you're going to sell something in a shop, you need to have all the health and safety,
Mm,
I needed it to be at a different level. And everybody in the market loved it. So I thought, well, not what's the next step here is to make it look pretty. And at this point, I literally had no idea what to do. I was like, well, how do you even like what is that? How do you even go about doing this? And I knew I wanted to call it Bendy Legs Granola because
right.
that's what my nephew talks about having when he's gone on a long walk on the beach. He says, oh, I've got bendy legs. And so it was a family name that we just said, oh, Bendy Legs Granola sounds great. So we knew the name, but I didn't know how to make it pretty. So I applied, I looked at Business Wales and they were offering grants, particularly for food companies at the time. So
Mm,
I applied for one of these grants and I think I got about 2.5 grand that I was allowed to spend on branding and product
okay.
development. Always worth checking your
Yeah.
local council or government websites for any kind of money, and you can use it for anything. You can use it for branding, logo, website, business coaching. So you do some digging, and they
Mm,
tend to go through cycles. So at that time they were looking for food businesses, and I got the money, and as part of it I had to use it for logo and website, and I found a couple of people, but I knew locally this really amazing artist and graphic designer called Lucy Richardson. And she came round to the house and she sat down and she was like, right, what do you want your brand to look like? And I was like, sorry? She said, what do you want what's the look and feel of your brand? I was like, what's that? Like, is that like what the label looks like? Or is that the color? She was like, oh God, here we go. So she got out all her stuff and she said,
and
go to your
was
cupboard,
this
bring me. This was right at the beginning.
was this the first time somebody from the outside became a part of your business, or like
Oh yeah, this was the
was
first time
behind the
anyone.
scenes?
This was the first time I'd had a conversation that wasn't with a member of the family or a member of the public.
Wow.
So, or,
Okay. And
selling the stuff, it was like, yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. That product demand. Is there a demand for this? And everyone says, yes, I love it. Are they going to pay for it? I don't know, but they love it. So
yeah.
let's go with it. So she was the first person. I got everything out of the cupboard, like all the like Heinz, beans, ketchup. She was like, this is a brand, Jerry. And we looked at clothes and we did a proper like branding exercise. And that was the beginning of the learning. So, she went
Wow.
away, she pulled three ideas together. We went through the whole branding process together and we created a thing, and we had
Mm,
different colors for different flavors. And then I had to do obviously all the environmental health courses and that sort of stuff so that I could make it in the kitchen. That was
mm,
challenging with two kids and a dog, but there we are.
gosh.
And that was the beginning. So did I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I did my 4 months market research, and to
Yeah.
this day, it's still the best granola most people have ever eaten. And now
Did
the
so
demand was
many
too early.
Yeah, you've done things so many things correctly without having any further external involvement. Any other? Did you have a business mentor at the time?
No,
No, and I mean, how did you stop yourself from getting so involved with like, oh, what the brand needs to look like,
I
and
don't
like
know.
how people, what I should price it, or like where I'm gonna sell it? Put up a stall and said, are people even interested in this?
Yeah. I
You
think
just
I was
started
reading
at
the
the
right stuff at the right time with the right people. And this is what I teach people actually. I'd never really
yeah.
thought about the link, but you've got to do that. Otherwise, you will spend thousands of pounds. And I've had people coming to me, my record is $14,000. So that's
Hmm.
like 8 grand
Gosh.
on essentially nothing. So you've got to do your research. You've got to decide, is this something that you actually really like and are passionate about or interested in? And is there a need? Like, there's no point spending time and money on something when there isn't a need. So I think possibly innocent smoothies. I also have got a lot of time for a company out in West Wales called the Do Lectures.
Hmm.
They have a business called Hyatt Denim. I read a lot from him. So I've kind of always been interested in that world, but I've not
Yeah.
really known what it was. So I think some of this is quite accidental, and I haven't done everything right. Don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of mistakes along the way, but I do feel like I did the research. Yeah, and I have done with this as well, I suppose.
Yeah. No, that sounds absolutely exciting. And I really want to have this granola now. Is it still available
Yeah,
anywhere?
it's great. No, it's still in my head. No,
Gosh.
I've given the recipe out once to somebody, but no, I haven't. But I got to the point where I was making like literally 30 kilograms a day from the
Wow.
kitchen, and I got a phone call from Amazon because they were going
Mm,
to start that Amazon food was going to be a big thing. I'm not sure. They have got things at place shops in London, but
mm,
they basically rang me and they were like, "Look, we'd like to stock your granola because I'd been at the BBC Food Festival. We'd like to stock your granola." I was like, how exciting. And we'd like to pay £1 for every 500-gram packet
wow.
because we talked about,
Okay.
we'll pay you £1 for everyone and we'll take as many as you can produce. I was like, well, it cost me £2.50 to make each one because it's got, organic seeds and nuts. It's got Welsh apple juice. It's got pure Canadian maple syrup. So that doesn't really work. And they were like, well, maybe you need to tweak the ingredients a little bit to reduce, to sort your profit margins out. And then you'll have a scalable food product. And
Mm,
that's when I was like, oh shit, I don't want to do that because that's not, I can't stand there in front of a diabetic patient and say, do you know what, this is actually a really good option for you. Or, I can't argue my case that this is actually a really healthy option to anyone. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like cutting those things just to make lots of product,
profit.
just to say that it's been made by Amazon. And also, how the hell am I going to produce that much? And the whole thing just started unraveling. And I was like, oh, what have I done?
Gosh. Oh, that sounds like it got big really fast.
Yeah, it was just under 3 years. But people still say to me, oh, it's a real shame. It's a bit like the medical thing. It's a real shame you're not making that granola anymore. Or it's a shame that didn't work out. This is an interesting thing about failure, isn't it? It's a shame that didn't work out. It's a shame that failed. And I was like, well, it didn't really fail. Like it was really successful, but it wasn't right for me, and it didn't retrospectively tick any of my values. There was no way I was going to be around after the school run every day, and no way I was going to be able to take time off to go traveling. And it wasn't a particularly creative process because once you've got a product, you just need to churn that product out all the time.
Yeah.
And
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 that's it.
instead of working for an employer, you're working for the product. And
Yeah. You've basically made yourself a job that was worse than the one that you left.
yeah, that's such an interesting take. And so I guess I want to ask you, what are probably your top two favorite mistakes that you've made that you keep referring back to, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the biggest mistake that we made with the How People, and again, this is a retrospective understanding, was that we were in a pandemic there was a really specific and quite significant problem going on, which was a global pandemic and everybody being shut in their bedrooms.
Mm,
There was no school, there was no after school sport, there was no brownies, guides, hockey, whatever else the kids do. There was no seeing their friends. So we had a captive audience of teenage girls that needed support,
mm,
right? So when we started, we had this massive launch. We had 50 people sign up. Like, I think there was something like maybe 15 of them knew us, by some degree of separation. Everyone else was random and was from social media or had come to one of the events. And none of them got on discovery calls. None of them, they'd literally just all saw what we were doing and straight away signed their daughters up for, I think, £27 a month to be part of a membership on a Thursday evening, whereby we did things, we had social calls where everybody kind of met everybody else and we chatted about a topic, maybe friendship, social media, something like that. We had ones where we did some like art, or we made brownies, or we did all on the end of Zoom. Then we would have an inspirational guest coming in, or maybe somebody, like we had actresses and engineers and zoologists. They'd come in and tell their story. It was so inspiring and amazing. I mean, I learned ridiculous amount, as did Polly, and we had so much fun and we absolutely loved it. It was serving a need for us and for them at that
mm.
point, this connection, this sense of belonging, this sense of like normality and this madness that was going on. And for parents, it was a no-brainer because it was like, okay, I'm going to put my kid in front of this woman who's a GP and her friend who's great, and they're going to have an hour of inspiration that isn't sitting on Netflix. What we didn't do quickly enough is adapt as we came out of the pandemic. So
Right.
and this happens with memberships and courses sometimes. Your first flurry of activity is amazing and everybody
Mm,
loves your first launch. And then the second or third time you do it, it's not quite as successful. And I think I thought at the time that that's all it was. It was just one of those things. And, we had a list, we had an email list that was growing slowly. We never ran any ads or anything. So I thought
mm,
we'd just rinsed the audience. Like, if you'd wanted
right.
to sign up, you'd already signed up. What we failed to recognize was the impact of coming out of the pandemic, all the clubs starting up. Like teenagers at 7 o'clock on a Thursday are generally busy doing something else.
Mm,
And so the numbers started to go down, but we didn't really adapt. We didn't really understand. I didn't recognize that that was happening. So we were already going into the courses space, into
mm,
schools, because schools were needing input during COVID as well. So we were running live assemblies, we were getting guests in, we were doing like a sort of off the shelf version of a course plus a live course. We'd started diversifying because the numbers in the membership were dropping. So we
mm,
diversified into schools. It very quickly became apparent that the schools out of COVID, they wanted us to come into the schools. They wanted us to
right.
run after school clubs with hoodies and, going in, doing vision boarding and,
Yeah.
chats about friendship. Now, if you're a parent and your business is based on running after school clubs, you're not going to be around very much for your children, particularly when you live in South Wales, because you're going to be driving to. We did
Mm,
a session in Cardiff once, and our circle would have been big. So we created another sort of aspect of the business that was really not particularly aligned with us being at home, working school hours, etc. Having said that, we absolutely loved that element of the business, but the membership then dropped down and became something that was unmanageable with the school thing. So we then focused on schools. We had a brilliant opportunity with the Prince's Trust, which came
mm,
about from one of the young members of the Prince's Trust following us on Instagram. I'll come back to that because there's a lesson in that. And we ended up signing up in a sort of pilot scheme whereby they then started delivering the content for us into schools. And that's when we realized that actually by collaborating with other organizations, we can get our message and our content in front of the kids that need it. And that was always the priority. We didn't want to just be able to help clients whose parents were able to pay. We wanted to help the kids in the back of the class who maybe didn't have as much support at home. Maybe nobody had ever talked to them about friendship and
mm,
social media. We wanted to touch those people. Now, how do we make that impact? That impact comes from collaborative partnerships. So Prince's Trust, potentially we've now got an offering that we want to put out in the NHS. So those sort of bigger collaborations are ways we're going to reach those people. but we both loved the membership as well. I love being in a Zoom call with lots of people.
Mm.
And actually, what I've created now with my business group is essentially like a grown-up version of what we used to do on a Thursday night with medics. So it satisfies my need to be on a Zoom call with lots of great people.
That is so nice. That's so good. I love this element of introducing your own constraints into the system once you've figured out what you're doing,
Yeah.
and just actually tailoring it. And then you realize, oh gosh, I gotta like completely pivot or like shift over.
Yeah.
And that's a whole experience in itself. Yeah. On the note of courses, I'm gonna take a quick pause for my own advertisement. Which is to say that if you've been thinking about making medicine your side hustle, then listen up because the Clinician Impact Actionship is now open for applications. This 6-week program is designed for clinicians who want to take control of their career, build credibility beyond clinical work, and establish themselves as leaders, innovators, or entrepreneurs. If you're ready to break out of the clinical career box and create new opportunities without walking away from medicine, then head to coachwithshub.com/action to apply. Make an impact again. And actually, I think this might be a good opportunity for Joe. If there's anything open for people to get involved with you and your work as well, this might be a good place for them to do that.
That's super kind. I would encourage anybody who's out there who's maybe done a coaching qualification, lifestyle medicine, is wanting to get out there, particularly mums with kids, busy lives, wanting to set up a business that works for them alongside family and their clinical work potentially, but that's more of a personal brand or an online service-based business. I have got a great program, which is the beginning of my bigger program. So I've put this, it's called the Clarity Starter Kit, and it's the first 3 modules of my bigger program with one-to-one support. And I've actually brought people together in a WhatsApp group. So depending on where you're at, reach out to me, send me an email on joe@bendylegs.com. I've kept my email. Send me an email, and if it's not right for you now, you might want to join the next cohort in June. I'm also going to be running a series of masterclasses over the summer, the kind of pillars that I think are needed to get your own business started. So yeah, most of my clients, I've got one very long-suffering man. Most of my clients are mums with kids because I've got 4 kids and I get what life looks like. So this is about somebody described a business as a nooks and crannies business. I don't know if you've heard that
No, I
expression.
haven't.
I just thought it was brilliant because it's basically a business that kind of seeps into those little bits of time that you didn't realize you had. And I think it's not
Uh,
something that you can do for long because otherwise there's an issue with boundaries and everything else. But at the beginning, as a parent with a clinical position and running a
mm,
business, your business needs to be a nooks and crannies business. When are you going to find the time? Is
mm,
it, while 10 minutes while you're on the school run, get there 10 minutes early, make a few connections on LinkedIn, reach out, send somebody an email. Like, how can you move your business forward with your busy life? That's who just get in touch with me. Send me an email.
wow. I love that expression, nooks and
Yeah,
crannies business.
great,
It's a
isn't
beautiful
it?
place to start for busy people. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
that's so,
you
so good.
you cannot, and people beat themselves up, don't they? I have different people in my bigger program. I've got a couple of people that are retired, taking early retirement. I've got a couple of people with no children who aren't working at the moment. And then I've got full-time GP partner with 3 children, 4-day-a-week GP partner with 2 children. And the amount of time these people have is different,
Yeah.
but what you can do in tiny periods of time is incredible. When we started the Howe People, I was homeschooling 2 boys. So anything is possible.
Wow. There you go. Anything is possible. I'm gonna ask you to quickly close the loop on the young person reaching out from Princess Trust and the story behind that, and quickly go into a little bit of what happened while you were on your travels.
Sure. The closing the loop of the young person in the Princess Trust is that you might be posting regularly on social media and feel like nobody is listening or watching or paying any attention at all. And this is where the consistency and the persistency piece comes in. So that young person, so she's about 25, and she was following us and had been for ages. And she went to like the big board meeting of the Princess Trust guys, which is a kind of, middle-aged white man centric board, I think.
Okay.
And they were talking about they've got an amazing program for boys, and they were talking about what to do for girls. And they were saying we need to start a program for girls in schools. And this young girl said, "Oh, well, have you seen what the How people are doing?" And they were like, "Well, who are they?" And she said, "Well, I follow them on social media, and they're doing courses and great stuff into schools. Maybe we should have a look." And they were like, "Yeah, amazing. If somebody's doing
Mm,
it, like, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's work together." So She'd never messaged us, she'd never emailed us, she'd never, I don't think she'd commented on our post particularly, but she'd seen what we were up to because we were visible and we were
Mm.
posting 3 times a week. And she reached out to us to ask us to collaborate with them. People say,
Wow.
well, how did you manage to wangle your way in? People think we were kind of knocking on the door and that would just amazed me. And then the rest kind of fitted into place. We got chatting with the lady that was running the whole thing. We had a few meetings and then it came from there. But if we hadn't been showing up relentlessly, despite not having massive traction on social media, despite not having particularly sold lots of things, we just showed up. So somebody will always be watching, and that connection, it might be years down the line. You never know
Yeah.
where your content is reaching somebody. So I
Yeah.
think that's the message there, because I know I'm not one, I don't tell people to do social media straight away. I'm not,
Mm.
I'm very much focused on your extended network and referrals. And the vast majority of people that I work with have not been cold from social media. They
Mm.
might have seen me on social media, but the decision making has been made a lot easier because somebody said, yes, you should work with Jo. She's the right person for you to work with, or whatever. Then that decision, so that 1 degree of separation makes that decision easier. But
Yeah.
you do have to be consistent, and it's tough. There's days where you're like, what on earth am I going to say today? Like, nobody cares. What am I doing this for? And you've
Yeah.
just got to keep showing up again and again and again and again.
That's it. If they don't know that you exist, then you can't help them really. And you're out here trying to help people make a difference, and they got to know about you.
Yeah. And no one's going to tell them as well as you do. So, and I don't know one medic that's ever come to me and said, I really want to work with you. I absolutely love posting on social media. There's nothing I love more than a good video. It makes me feel amazing. Like, nobody says
Gosh.
that.
No, nobody does. To be honest, I think if it wasn't for LinkedIn, then I probably still wouldn't be on social media. I think it's made it a lot easier for me personally. Everyone's so professional. It's a wonderful community. So I guess if anyone's listening and is hesitant, then hop on LinkedIn and come say hi to us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
LinkedIn's great. And I think every medic should be on LinkedIn, because the other thing that medics don't value is that you are a walking authority in whatever it is you're talking about. Even if you're at the beginning of, say, you're coaching, say you've trained to be a coach, but you've been a doctor for 10 years. Okay, you haven't been a coach for 10 years, but you have got that credibility, trust, and authority that somebody who has, say, for example, worked in a shop before and then done a coaching course,
yeah,
you're miles ahead of the curve. So you are showing up as a professional. So I think you have to be on LinkedIn. And actually, you can
100%.
start a business just on LinkedIn. You don't need a website or any of the fancy stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do 100% agree with that. Let's quickly go into the travel. So I found that really interesting. And as you were sort of explaining how you went away on this travel journey, you came back with 3 ideas for potential businesses. One of them was the How People, and that took off. In my mind, I was like, why is there always like the story when you kind of go away somewhere and you come back with enlightenment, be it like the Lion King, I guess. He went away on this thing or forced to go away and he came back as a king. And there's always like the story. What was it about your journey? You mentioned a little bit of self-coaching, but what is it that happens, do you think, on these journeys that really unlocks the next level for people?
Great question. For me, it was a different perspective on parenting, on the
Mm.
education system, on being with my kids. Um, Prior to this, we'd gone on holidays. We do tend to do 3 week sort of more adventurous holidays, but that's all we'd
Hmm.
ever done. Our kids were in the school system because everyone else's were. It wasn't something I'd ever considered. Didn't know anybody that had homeschooled. Had my sort of slight judgments potentially about people that did, retrospectively, maybe. I don't know. But it was never something that was on my radar or my husband's radar. And then it came about because we both are massive skiers. We talked about seeing if we could do a ski season. My cousins live in Canada. See if we could do a ski season with the kids at some point. It was a time that we were doing a house swap for the summer. We live by the sea, so we tend to move out of our house for 6 weeks and rent it out or house swap it. That's how we do our travels. We house swap. And I
Mm.
know this because I remember exactly what I was doing when I heard this podcast, because I was ironing a pillowcase, which I never do, but it was because it was being house swapped. So I was ironing a pillowcase and heard a podcast by a guy called Daniel Prince, who had traveled around the world with 4 children on house swapping points and house swapping all his way around.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, well, if we're going to take 3 months off to do a ski season with the kids in Canada, then they're going to lose their place in school anyway, because that's the authorities. If you're away for a certain length of time, they have to take you off lists. We'd already been told that. So if we're going to lose that anyway, then is there some way that we can make this happen for longer? Because we had a friend that had taken 6 months traveling, and she said that her only regret was not doing it for longer. So I
Wow.
thought, well, I think this is probably going to work out. So let's see what we can do. And within, a couple of days of hearing this podcast and sort of sitting together, thrashing out how this could work, Dave had taken an unpaid, a year of unpaid leave. I was going to leave my job. We remortgaged the house, worked out that we had a pot to be able to do stuff with. And then we worked out a journey and a route that involved, we had a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. So
Wow.
quite young. And we were kind of like, we want to be adventurous, but not too adventurous. So, we went to Sri Lanka, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America. It was very, first world travel potentially, but we did it all on house swaps, and it would have been
Wow.
completely unaffordable to do it otherwise. I posted about it today, actually, because it's something that I'm super passionate about. What it did immediately, as soon as we made a decision, we had a totally different sort of way of educating the kids. Like our youngest one was in nursery at the time. He's a very quiet kid, very intelligent, very quiet. We've got 2 boys, really different. And he wasn't really enjoying nursery at school, didn't really light him up. As soon as we took a different approach to education, for example, we would go for walks and we'd talk about the flora and the fauna. We found a big pool full of frog spawn that summer before we went traveling, literally down the road in Swansea. A pool full of frog spawn. We'd revisit it every couple of days, and we watched this, like, the life cycle of a frog, like in front of our eyes. I've got this
Wow.
amazing picture of him holding this froglet that had crossed the road, and suddenly he came alive with us putting that little bit of effort into understanding. Then we'd come home and we'd draw a picture about it and we'd talk about it, and that's what education should be like, bringing real life situations alive. And our kids' schools are now much better at doing that. But
Yeah.
homeschooling and traveling with your children is hands down the most incredible experience. And you watch them blossom and learn. They become like just, much more societally aware. They don't have, I could talk about homeschooling forever, but there's so much judgment placed on it. But essentially that year, all we were invested in was learning with the kids, experiencing with the kids, having those memories with the kids. There were no parties. There were no family trying to get you to go for Sunday dinner. There were no weekends away. There was no work. There were no bills to pay because we'd sorted out the house. All of those things that occupy our lives were kind of gone. And it was like, right, where are we going to? Where's the next place? What's the address? Has anybody messaged them? What we're going to do when we get there, we'll work it out when we get there. It's just simplifying
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And all of that on the back of just the decision to actually do it.
Yeah, the
And it's
decision to
just,
actually do it is the hardest
yeah.
thing. And again, the judgment, right? Well, what's going to happen to the children? How are you going to do that? What happens if you lose your place in school? What about their friends? What about their sports? Homeschoolers are weird. They're never going to be the same again. Blah, blah. I mean, you wouldn't believe the things that people will say. And then
Yeah.
occasionally you'll have somebody that will say, I remember somebody saying to me, this year will define them as they grow up. And I remember thinking, well, it probably won't because they're very young, but it totally has.
Okay.
Because since we've got back, we've shifted the way we work. We now take 3 months off every year. We've made travel and adventure a massive part of our lives. And they are the kids that travel and do this. And that's
That is so
part of
exciting.
yeah. And especially the number 3, and the third and fourth ones were a lot younger, but it's part of their normal life.
Yeah.
But I think in answer to the question around it, what it gave me was time, that we don't have in our busy lives. And I think that's the challenge for me now when I work with people who are wanting to explore all these ideas. It's allocating those moments in the day, whether it's going for a walk or sitting on a park bench for 10 minutes with a journal, like actually making sure that you have time in your life to be able to explore these ideas. I just had lots of time and I was really lucky, but I had so much time that I could really plan out what probably you would do with a business coach. So I probably did to myself what I would help somebody else do. But if you don't give yourself the time, those ideas just remain like a constant noise. And that noise combined with your inner critic telling you that actually, who are you for doing that? And, why is anybody going to pay you for that? And just
Yeah.
stick to the day job because you're good at it. Like, put those two things in combination, you'll never move forward. So, taking that step to move forward. And the three business things, I think this
Mm-hmm.
comes down to another thing that I'm really anal about is that you can help everyone with everything. We all know that. You're all brilliant, particularly A&E consultants and GP.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Like whoever it is, we can sort it out. None of that. And I knew that. I knew that from my previous experiences. I knew that this had to be specific. So I had three
Mm.
groups of people and I did that whole like ikigai cross that, what do people come to me for? What if people say to you, can I pick your brains about something? What is it? Like write that down.
Yeah.
What lights you up? What feels easy? What would you do without being paid? What are you good at? What do you know? That sort of stuff. And I had three groups. One was girls going from primary to secondary school, social media, their needs to do something else, that group. Then the next group was older teenagers, so those going from like A levels to university and matching them with mentors. So if you've
Mm.
got a kid that wants to do medicine, they've got a mentor in their 20s that they can communicate with. That was an idea. And then the other idea was helping medics and healthcare professionals start their own personal brand. And I always thought that was something that I would do eventually.
Mm.
But I looked at the three and somebody said to me, where is the biggest need at the moment? And my biggest need was that first group because I had a
Mm.
daughter that age and I really saw that we were going down the pan with social media and friendship issues around teenage girls. So that's where we started. And I put the rest in a little drawer in my head and I thought, well, they can just stay there for a minute and then I'll do this first.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what I'm really hearing is not the evaluation of which one would make more money, which one would
No.
have a better exit. It's all about really being mission driven. Like, what's something you're super passionate about? What do you want to change in this world? And using that as a driver. And the money is part of it. Money is the lubricant that'll keep things going. But it's about making an impact and finding your mission. And I think it's never too early, never too late to find a mission. Um,
Yeah, 100%. I've got to be honest that money was not, you've got to have your business does have to be potentially profitable. Otherwise, you're creating a very expensive hobby or running a charity, both of which I've done before. So this time round, I was much more aware of what was going to be needed for me to make this profitable.
hmm,
And I have reinvested into my own learning to be able to grow as a person, to be able to offer what I do and to have that my I now feel like my authority and experience is all coming together in something that is very valuable for me to get
yeah,
out there and give to people. But money is not at the heart of anything that I've ever done. It's all about purpose, it's about joy, it's about what works for the people around me. And I make mistakes, right? And sometimes I haven't been good with boundaries, especially with the Howe People at the heyday. It was like I worked late, got up early,
mm,
and it's difficult to put your business down when you love it. And
yeah.
that's something I see. It's difficult to shut the computer, to walk away. There's always another email to send. There's always another post to prepare. There's always another podcast to do. So you have to be quite self-motivated to shut everything down and say, right, it's time for.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing this entire journey with us. I think there's so many pivotal moments and so much for people to take away. I do want to do a bit of a swap. I know I've just been on
Mm,
your podcast. I published today, actually. So today
I
on the
know.
24th of March, I had a listen this morning. I was like, wow, surreal. I'm on the Startup Surgery podcast. That is so cool.
I know.
So
I can't
thank
wait
you
to
for
get it
having
out
me.
there tomorrow.
Yeah.
I tend to do my podcast promotion the next day, but yeah, I'm super grateful that you came on that because I think what I loved about talking to you is this sense of leadership and control over your career. You have taken that control and you asked questions and you got answers that you knew were not quite right, weren't they? And I love that bit where you
Mm.
say you went and you asked, could I have a coach, please? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So this was, I think, ST one and a half-ish. I kind of started to have this inkling of like, okay, like now I'm in the training program, and I know that people kind of have different consultant careers or what different people listen to. Yeah, so it was sort of ST one and a half, two-ish when I started looking towards what does consultant life look like, and I started exploring all my options, and I was on all the sort of various platforms talking to consultants and attending career days and things, and I said, okay, there's pre-hospital medicine, there's pediatric emergency medicine, there's, you can do sports medicine, you can do expedition medicine. All of these various options kind of came up, and I was exploring that, and I said, let me get some help to figure this out. And I'd heard that there was PSWS, and I think this was just off the back of COVID, so very familiar with that. And they were advertising coaching services as well. So I asked for a coach. And the first time I was triaged, I laid out what the problem was, and they said, well, you can go back and speak to your educational supervisor. They'll tell you what all your options are. And I said, okay, fine. So I did go back, and they said, well, in emergency medicine, these are all your options. And I'd kind of already reviewed all of those options, but similar to you, I think there was something missing. There was something else and something more, and I didn't want to just fit into another box and do another checkbox or do a dual CCT. And another year passed by, and by then I'd kind of decided that, like, no, I want to scale my impact. That's what I want to do. I want to impact many more lives and bigger systems. So I'm going to go into management consulting because that's what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to like help people understand complex things so that they can do something about it and take action and change the world. So I decided, I got myself an interview with a big management consulting firm, and I decided to quit if I got that job. And thankfully, along the way, my wife and I decided that I should do a QI fellowship as a stepping stone to see, like, okay, is that really going to change the world the way that I wanted to? And I decided to go back to PSWS, and I said, no, can I please have a coach? Like, I'm ready to do this. Like, let's double check, please. So I went back, worked with a coach, and yeah, things turned out to be a lot different. Thankfully, by then I'd come across quality coaching. So using the QI methodology, I went into that fellowship thinking that, oh, I'm going to learn so much about QI, and at the end of the day, I'm going to do QI and I'm going to make things better. Whereas I actually came across quality coaching, and I came across on the other side, instead of saying, I'm going to make this better, I came across saying, I can help other people do this better. And that
Yeah,
was just so exciting for me.
yeah,
And that's how I kind of went down this rabbit hole of executive coaching.
love it. What do you wish you'd known now or what do you wish you'd known then, or what's been the biggest learning for you now in running your own thing?
I think it's really about the people, and I think I kind of knew this in the beginning that it all comes down to the people, but it really is underrated how much understanding the people you're working for can contribute to the actions that you take and really help you just unclutter things. If you're ever confused, just talk to the people you're trying to serve, talk to the people you're trying to help. And I wish I'd done that earlier and sooner in a more structured way. And now I have like questionnaires all over the place, and I have this quiz which helps them but also helps me understand who they are. And every time you apply for something like the Actionship program, you're going to get lots of questions because I want to really understand who you are, where you are, what are your challenges, what you need help with, am I even the right person to help you,
Yeah.
um, those sort of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many people out there, aren't there? I think it is important that there is this match, and you
Mm,
need that information as a coach. You want to work with the people that you're going to be able to fit with the best and that are going to be able to take those next steps with you. So I think, yeah, I think everybody should be asking questions and digging a little bit deeper. Don't just take things from as face value, yeah? You need to be finding out more about people that you work with.
100%. Do 5 months of market research, put up a stall and
Yeah.
sell your granola and see if
Yeah.
people will buy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There we are.
just have to get out there.
Just do it.
It
Give
doesn't
it
have
a
to be
Nike.
perfect.
Just do
Yeah,
it.
just get
Not,
started.
it's not perfect. It's never perfect. If you wait for it to be perfect, well, if you wait for all your pigeons to line up, one of them will be dead or something. You've just got
Absolutely.
to do it. And again, we come down to the whole medic thing, but we are not used to winging it in medicine, and there is a jolly good reason for that. And this is very, very different. So, yeah, all of those analogies. I love, people talk about progress over perfection, but for me, it's about getting scrappy, and it's
Mm,
about not, everything does not have to be perfect before you try. But if you don't get that idea out of your head, and all you need is that one person, I've got in my program, there's a section that I called From Then Till Now, and it basically talks people through. It doesn't actually talk about granola at all. It talks people through from the how people, because I think it's sometimes people can look at people like you or me who are showing up on LinkedIn and doing this sort of stuff, and they're like, well, how are they doing that or whatever? And actually, I just tell my story, warts and all, from finances through. And there's a brilliant sort of series of emails from the first email that Neris ever sent me. She literally sent me an email saying, I've seen you on this group. I've heard that you've done this. I need help with my online business,
Mm.
making it into something outside of the NHS. Can you help me? And I wrote back going, well, I'm not really a coach and I'm not really an expert and I don't really have any time. But yeah, I'd really love to help you, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do this. And she was like, well, any time that you've got. And I replied saying, well, the only time I've got is between 6 and 7 in the morning on a Monday. Would that be okay? And she was like, yep, that's absolutely fine.
And we put those constraints on ourselves. I mean, so many of us say like, "Oh, I just can't do it because I don't have time," and nobody's gonna like bend to my ways. But really, if you make something valuable, everyone's gonna show up.
Exactly.
It's
So bless
amazing.
her. She was the first. And now so tomorrow I always do a 6 till 7 in the morning because, people don't have time. And occasionally people
Yeah.
say, sorry, I'm doing Pilates then, but most of the time people can arrange their day to turn up.
That's amazing. That's so, so good. I'm just going to scour our comments for any questions. I don't see any at the moment. So I guess if there's anyone who has questions, please do drop them in the comments. And if anybody wants to reach out to Joe, head over to our website, head over to the Startup Surgery podcast, have a
Yes.
listen, and send Joe an email. We
Yep.
now know why it's called Joe at
Exactly. I mean, I
bendylegs.co.
could no, bendylegs.com. So my website is joewatkins.com and
Mhm.
my email address is still joe@bendylegs.com. Or just direct message me on LinkedIn. But I think if you're curious about entrepreneurship and you're not sure where to start, I would binge listen to my podcasts. If you want to be signposted, if your time is really precious, just send me a message, tell me what you do, what you want to do, and I will tell you which episodes to listen to. And I will always reply to an email personally, not necessarily immediately, but you will get a reply from me. So I'm always happy to help. And it might be that you need the help now, it might be that you need the help in 6 months, it might be that I signpost you to somebody else. But if you just sit on it and think, well, I'll do that another time, you won't. So what is it? If not now, when?
Yes,
You're never going to wake up one morning and be like, God, I've got oodles of time to do this now. It's not going to happen.
do it.
Just do it.
Let's do it. Fantastic. And likewise, you can find more about me on LinkedIn and my website, coachwithshub.com. I also reply always on LinkedIn, so do join us. And thank you very much for tuning into the Medic Side Hustles podcast. Our next live podcast will be on the 2nd of April. And it's a bit of a special one because we're not speaking to a medic this time. We're speaking to Wesley Fogel, and we're going to be talking about all things fundraising. So if you're interested in that, do join us on the 2nd of April. And if you're wondering if you're ready to make medicine your side hustle, try my quiz. Joe, any last words for our listeners?
Try your quiz. It's great. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, my last words are just do it, send the email and get scrappy and see it as a one big adventure. And if you don't do it, just imagine looking back and thinking, well, what if? That's what I always think, which is why I get myself into
Mm,
all these scrapes, is because I think, well, what would happen if I didn't do it? Would I regret it? Could this
yeah,
take us on a different path? You don't want to do that. You don't want to regret stuff. So anything is possible.
and it'll always work out.
Yeah. Even if it doesn't work
Right.
out, it works out.
Yeah. So I hope this conversation sparked some ideas and inspired you to think bigger about your career and your impact. Until next time, stay curious, keep solving big problems, and remember, you have the power to create something extraordinary. See you soon.